Good morning, everybody. Broadcasting live this morning from Fern River Resort in Felton, California, about 5 miles north of Santa Cruz in the Redwoods. Morning, everybody. Such a glitch, little minor technological glitch. I see Tim Ford is watching. Hi, Tim. Oh, it's just been such a relaxing weekend, and the sun is coming over the redwood trees into my eyes. So if I'm squinting, well, you know why. Welcome. Hi, Jessica. So glad you're here. So glad you're all here. Me from Fern River Resort. Today's message is fatherly love in honor of Father's Day. So, this is always a difficult one for me to do because so many of us have fathers that weren't what we had hoped they would be, that we didn't have the relationship that we hoped we would have, and others of us have had very loving relationships, and we want to honor the divine aspects of them that maybe when we're little and trying to figure things out, we're not always able to see until we gain some wisdom, some divine wisdom. Today, I'd like to attempt to do that. I think I'll be able to do it. So, when I used to think of father, I think of my earthly father for one, and then when I would hear the word father in religion, a bit of me would cringe because of some associations that I had that went along with it that were difficult for me to get beyond. And I suspect that many of you may be in that place. Since I've been in unity and in seminary, I've begun to, for me, the word in religious or spiritual context means that great unlimited divine aspect of you. There is a divine aspect as a child of God, as a creation of that divine presence, of that divine energy. You are created by that and therefore inherit those aspects. And for me, the Father is that part of me that is that divine aspect of me. I have the human aspect, and then I have the Father aspect, which is the divine part of me. So for me, it could be the Father is the higher self, the human is the small self. However you want to define it, but for me, that's where I've come to in this day and time. So the son or the daughter, the son of the father, or in that day and time, they spoke of the son because that was the culture. But nowadays, we know there's no gender attached. Could be son, daughter, or just sibling or child. That's the human aspect of you. So that's just my understanding. So for years, regarding my earthly father, I was trying to fill the void in my own heart of a father that I didn't feel was emotionally present to me, wasn't the father ideally that I thought he ought to be, that I wanted him to be. And I did that through achievements, alcohol, drugs, sex, boyfriends, and trying to fulfill that through my earthly dad as well. And it just wasn't working for me for many years. I ended up feeling more lonely, more empty, yearning for something more, thinking there's got to be something greater. Knowing that there was, somehow deep inside me, I knew there was. So this is one woman's story, though. She got rejected from medical school because she was goofing off, and her dad told him he was sorry to hear of the turn of events, but that he was so very proud of her and her accomplishments and all that she had achieved. And he went on to recount situations in his own life where defeat made success seem unlikely, yet he had overcome. And at that time, he quoted to his daughter something written by Theodore Roosevelt. And here's what Theodore Roosevelt said. And think of your father as I'm recounting this, so you think of your father. It is not the critic that counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by sweat and dust and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again, because there is no effort without valor, without error, and without shortcoming. Thinking of your father out there, blood, sweat, tears, in the arena, but who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows the great enthusiasms, the devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best, knows in the end that the triumph of high achievement, and who, at the worst, if he fails, or at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who knew neither victory nor defeat. Our fathers were sometimes out there in the arena fighting, trying to figure it all out, the struggles of life. And maybe some of them are not able to love us in the way we think. Maybe some of them haven't even learned what love means because of a terrible childhood. Who knows what goes on? And sometimes we perceive they don't love us when really they do, but they just don't know how to express it. And the woman whose father said these words to her, who had been rejected from medical school, and had read her that quote, she said, as I finished reading those words from my father, from Theodore Roosevelt, a defining moment in my life took place. My father had taught me a valuable lesson, that I could fail and still be valued and respected and loved. Wouldn't it be nice if everyone had that kind of father? We see these Hallmark cards spouting these sentiments, and some of us, I've known people who have gone to look for a card and they just couldn't find one that expressed because they just weren't feeling it. Many of us did not have that kind of father. Probably most of us. I'd venture to say that. Most have a mixture. I mean, after all, we're all human, good, bad, ugly. We have the human aspect and the divine aspect to us as children of God. Many of us have a mixture. Most of us have a mixture. So if we perceive things differently as kids, then we're trying to figure things out. And we're confused and don't know what it all means. We've no experiences. If we were to perceive things differently in childhood, we might be able to see the divine aspect in our dad, the seeds in our dad, the seeds who have been planted in all of us from the get-go, through the struggle. Maybe we could see those divine aspects of a loving and wise and kind dad that we long for. And in ourselves.
Right when you touched your nose. So you're sitting there like that.
Okay, we're back. Sorry about that glitch in the signal. With my own dad, at some point as I grew older, I began to see how interconnected everything really was. How everything that had happened with my dad and in my life was built on each other. Each and every step along the way. The doors that opened, the doors that closed. And I learned that sometimes what I perceive to be the ugly, the good even more beautiful, if I choose to see it that way. That's not to devalue or undermine or invalidate of those who had a loving dad or those who had not such a loving dad. Not to do that at all. Just saying that I learned a lot for perceiving that I had less than what I wished I had some days. I had regrets about my interactions with my dad that I couldn't understand. that I didn't try harder. And I know my dad had regrets. And when I admit that, there's a calm that settles over me. It just strikes me how simple it all can really be. Nothing fancy or difficult, but still profound. I gain an appreciation for things my dad taught. Not always through lovingness, but I gain an appreciation, and that appreciation has grown. I met a new friend yesterday. Grew up in Russia, and her father had died a couple of months ago, and she was devastated. Well, recently he died. I took notes from her last night, but I lost the notes this morning, so I had tried to reconnect, and I'm hoping I'm getting it okay. Her father died, and for a couple of months she said she was down on her knees, hunched down on the ground in utter devastation and grief. And she'd not seen him for a number of years because she's been living in the United States. And she believes it was probably COVID that took him. Ironically enough, though, her grief was a little bit about missing him, but so much more. Give you a little background. His life purpose was to get others to appreciate Russian culture and language. Accused of being a traitor sometimes to Russia, accused sometimes of selling out to those of us in the West. He risked his career. He risked everything. He could have easily been imprisoned in one of Stalin's prison camps for that. He became, though, very prominent in his country and published many articles and books. His life was a victory, unfortunately, at the expense of loved, in particular, his only daughter, my newfound friend. He would come home from work and to be worshipped and placed on a pedestal. And he lectured at Maria tirelessly. And she would just sit there feeling inconsequential, insignificant. She fought against it. She spent her life trying to measure up. She had seen herself as being second in command to her father, following in his footsteps. And after years of pursuit, but it was his camp. Okay. So here we are back again. Sorry about that glitch in the wireless connection. She spent her life trying to measure up to her dad and had seen herself as being second in command to him, following in his footsteps. And after years of pursuing her own doctorate degree, her PhD, and her own publications, she realized that he did not want that. He did not want her to be second in command to him. And she wanted that very much. Eventually, she began to feel angry. And then she felt guilty because she felt like feeling angry was not a Christian thing to do. Even though in her childhood, Russians were not allowed to practice religion. If they admitted to that or were caught entering a church, they lost everything. But even so, she still felt the Christian thing was not to be angry. And of course, this was a confusing thing to her in childhood as well. But that's another talk. Anyway, I assured her that we are allowed to feel anger. No. So we need to lighten up and realize we're allowed to be angry. The anger is a beautiful emotion that tells us something needs our attention. That's all. But at any rate, when she realized she was angry, she said to her dad this: "Screw you, Dad. I'll just live my own life." Not really funny at all, but when he died, her grief was multi-layered. She was missing the person that she loved, that she had loved. Yes, she loved him anyway, despite all of this. Number two, she grieved that she could never accomplish enough to win his love. She was never able to accomplish all of the things that she had wanted to for him, for his approval, and I guess for herself too. And number three, she grieved the idea of what she had wished their relationship had been, that it was not. Grieved heavily. And I feel like I share a lot with Maria's story. My story is not the same as hers. My stuff is not the same as hers. We all have our own cross to bear. That's what my little brother used to say to me. The nature of my challenges are not quite the same as hers, but in many ways I relate. Her hardships and my hardships shaped us, shaped her, shaped me into a fortitude that allowed me to better navigate life, into making wiser decisions, into the freedom to choose to stay in the guidance of my divine source. After years of going against worshiping her dad, Maria said, why wouldn't a father love her daughter, his daughter? Why wouldn't he want her success to equate his? For years, it must have been heavy on her heart. There was a hole in her heart. And she said she sought to fill the void through destructive ways. But she learned from those experiences and realized what she was really yearning for, the experience of connection with that divine, with the divine aspect of herself, with the great unlimited Father, the divine aspect of you, the divine aspect of me, the divine aspect of everyone. That's what she was really longing to experience, that connection. Thought it was all these things on earth outside ourselves. And when she realized that was when all that other stuff fell away as so much less meaningful. To experience that is the ultimate. But before she realized that, she was mortifyingly lost, and she had yearned for something greater. There must be something greater. When she was lost and doing all these behaviors, destructive behaviors, looking to fill that void in ineffective, destructive ways, instead of looking inside for her answers, she continued down that path leading to. Part of her must have said, if I just keep going, I can do it by myself. And she seemed to be going nowhere fast. But she continued to pursue that path. Gone were the days of sunshine and laughter that she remembered from childhood. Instead, her heart was filled with fear and anger and loneliness. She was missing something, and she was angry at herself. And she began then to blame her father. He should have watched over her better. He should have loved her better. He should have taught her better ways. He shoulda. She grew into a woman who had seen the worst of life, beaten and bruised with all the world had to give, her heart shattered, victim mentality. Through the muck and the matter of life she had traveled, then at some point she realized what she was truly yearning. The divine presence, the Father connection of the divine Father, her divine source, the divine presence, the divine energy, her creator that was inside her. And with that realization, she realized she was finally home. To the lovingness, the divine wisdom, and the wise guidance. She was finally able to say with the term namaste, you know what that means? The divine in me, including our earthly father, our dad, who in his imperfections, a stumbling man trying to figure out and navigate through earthly challenges, the seeds of divine were planted there in the beginning, just like in you and me and everyone else. The divine in me sees the divine in you. She was finally able to see that. And just one last woman's story. Another woman's story. Short story here. She said her dad had died unexpectedly at age 78. Family was heartbroken. And during the funeral mass, her cell phone began to vibrate in her purse. And she was surprised that someone would be calling after all, knowing that they were at the funeral mass. And afterwards, there was a message on her phone that said, "Hi, this is your dad," said the male voice. "Wanted to let you know that I made it home, safe." The caller obviously had the wrong number, but the message was clear. Dad had completed his journey back home to the spiritual realm, and he wanted them to know. Thanks, Dad. Until we meet again. Namaste. It's not letting me push the finish button. Let's take it out of that.